modern capitalism is the challenge of the new technological and scientific developments, especially in biogenetics. Let me be very clear here. The main consequence of the scientific breakthroughs in biogenetics is, to put it very simply, I think, the end of nature. That is to say, once we know the rules of the construction of a natural organism, how it reproduces itself through its genome and so on, once we know this, natural organisms are transformed into objects amenable to manipulation. Nature, human and inhuman, is in this way desubstantialized. It's deprived of its impenetrable density. In our spontaneous understanding, nature is not what is out there independently of us. Nature is the density of our life world, which by definition is unfathomable, impenetrable. This is what I think is disappearing today. Because you see what is the trick. The trick is that once, and that's the big prospect of today's biogenetics, it's not only to manipulate through biogenetic interventions existing living beings, but to even, they use the term life number 2, like Earth 2 and so on, to create a totally new form of artificial life. But even if this is utopia, the point is that once you do this, then the natural life loses its natural character and becomes life number 1. You no longer again see nature as this breathing, living entity. It becomes a transparent mechanism. How to deal with the ethical consequences of this is, again, something that I think cannot be solved within the framework of capitalism. Then, last but not least, the crucial problem, the new forms of apartheid emerging today. New walls, people living excluded in slums. There were many theories about what does September 11th of 2001 mean. I think that it's crucial to compare September 11th with 12 years earlier, the 9th of November 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell. Usually people say this was the end of utopias. Finally we accepted reality, capitalist reality, the way it is. But I think the 90s were the real utopia. The utopia, precisely the Fukuyama utopia, that we found the formula. Liberal democratic capitalism, and okay, we can improve it here and there, but that's it. And I think that the message or the historical meaning of September 11th is precisely the end of this utopia. History is back here, new walls are emerging here and there. It is only, I mean, from Berlin Wall went down, but now we have walls between Israel and West Bank, around the European Union, on the US-Mexico border, and so on. The ethical consequences of this are staggering, and we are not even aware of them. There was a small note in newspapers, I don't know how much you noticed it, about a strange trial which goes on now on the small island of Lampedusa in southern Italy. Namely, now, 2 weeks ago, even less, on September 20th, 7 fishermen from Tunis went on trial for the crime of rescuing 44 African migrants from certain death in the sea. They found them there, half drowned, dying, among them women, pregnant women, small children, and so on. They brought them to safety to the small island of Lampedusa, the nearest piece of land, and they were immediately, the Tunisian fishermen, arrested for aiding and abetting illegal immigrants, and they should get between 1 and 15 years in jail. so crazy here? What this incident demonstrates is that Giorgio Agamben's notion of homo sacer, the excluded from the civil order, the one who can be killed with impunity, is fully operative in today's Europe, which praises itself as the ultimate bastion of human rights and humanitarian help. Are we aware that in the middle of this Europe of human rights, helping the starving in Africa and so on, what happened is that a group of people found themselves confronted with a clear situation. And I'm not a naive idealist here. I'm not the naive leftist who say, let's open our borders, let the millions come. These are real problems. I'm not this kind of naive leftist. All I'm saying is nonetheless, this should give us to think. The situation was clear. People on their business job in the middle of the sea found a group of other people which were close to death. Among them, again, small children, pregnant women, and so on. All they did is save them. For this, they are put to trial. And the message is clear, as Italian judges hinted. Namely that there are documented cases of opposite examples where fishermen encountered refugees on the seas close to death and they simply kicked them off, killed them. You don't get to trial for that. I think it is absolutely crucial not to oppose this as a kind of aberration to this new notion of liberal humanitarian help and so on and so on and so on. This is the obverse of today's humanitarianism. When we do humanitarian help, we do it so that the other stays there, so that the distance is maintained. Which is why I think that more and more, instead of the old class struggle, the new form of fundamental social division today is the gap between, to put it very simply, those who are inside and those who are outside of control. And this is a very interesting, paradoxical phenomenon. You know that one of the commonplaces is that today we live in a society of total control, even if we do not get political terror as in Stalinism or fascism. We are observed all the time, controlled, and so on and so on. But is it not all the more strange how in most of the countries, even in the developed ones like the United States, slums, favelas, and so on are growing, literally growing. Are you aware that today over 1 billion people already live in slums, favelas, and so on? And I'm not using this term in some Christian sentimental, metaphorical way. I define slums, favelas as places where the power, state power, withdraws its control. It just, okay, prevents excesses, but basically they are out of the civil order. The story I like to evoke, I love it, is of the German, half dissident, half state writer from old German Democratic Republic, Christa Wolf, who reports how, in the days of German Democratic Republic, she brought her small daughter to that high TV tower in East Berlin, and from there you can see the West. Now, the East German map of West of Berlin area was a unique thing which I love. It was the map detail of the whole Berlin area, but the West Berlin island was white, black, as if it's nothing there. And she, Christa Wolf, reports how when her small daughter looked from this tower into the west, says, "Look, mommy, it's not white there are people there," and so on, this surprise. Maybe that's what we should do. We have more and more in our states this kind of blank areas. I even think that if the principal task of the emancipatory politics of the 19th century was to break